My family announced I was a failure. I stayed quiet, just sitting by my sister's hospital bed, until the nurse bowed to me and said, "Greetings, Chief of Surgery." My sister froze. My parents went white. Can you imagine spending your entire life feeling invisible to the people who should love you most, constantly dismissed as a failure? Well, I did. And then one day, the universe delivered the most deliciously poetic moment of comeuppance. My family, who'd never believed in me, found themselves utterly speechless when a nurse addressed me as Chief of Surgery in the very hospital my sister was being treated. Let me take you back. My love affair with medicine started early, at just 7 years old. My grandpa needed heart surgery, and I remember clutching a kid's book about the human body in that sterile waiting room. When the surgeon finally walked out, he looked like a superhero in a white coat. Right then I knew, that's what I wanted to be. I'm going to be a doctor, I declared proudly on the car ride home. My dad, Richard, chuckled. That's a nice dream, Sammy, but it takes a special kind of person. Then my younger sister, Emily, piped up. I want to be a doctor too. My mom, Diana, immediately reached back to pat Emily's knee. You've got the brains for it, sweetheart. That was my first taste of our family dynamic. Emily was the golden child, bright, charismatic, destined for greatness. I was the quiet, steady one, the one who should aim for realistic goals. My parents, a business executive and a former beauty queen, valued status and appearances above all else. Emily learned to play to that audience, always in the spotlight, quick to show off, quicker to make excuses. I was just determined, a trait they somehow saw as a lack of ambition. By the time I was 10, the pattern was set. Emily's birthdays were elaborate affairs. Mine were usually an afterthought. When I brought home straight A's in middle school, my dad just nodded absently. That's nice, Samantha. But when Emily pulled her C's up to B's, they took her out for a special dinner to celebrate her remarkable improvement. It hit me then. I had to find validation elsewhere. While they were at Emily's dance recitals, I was in the garage, dissecting frogs, doing chemistry experiments, devouring medical documentaries. I was building my foundation, brick by painstaking brick, even as they assumed I was just passing time. My saving grace was Mr. Daniels, my high school biology teacher. One day, he caught me examining slides after class. You've got a good eye, he told me. Better technique than most of my seniors. It was the first time an adult had truly seen my potential. He became my mentor, giving me advanced materials, writing me a glowing recommendation. You're going to make an exceptional doctor, Samantha. Call me when you're changing the world. I nearly cried. Someone finally believed me. At home, the response was, predictably, lukewarm. Pre-med. My dad frowned. That's a tough road. Most pre-med students don't actually make it, you know. My mom added, at least you'll have a good education to fall back on when you decide on something more suitable. Their subtle undermining continued through college. Every phone call asked if I was still enjoying medicine, as if it were a phase. Every holiday, they'd comment on how tired I looked, how maybe it wasn't meant to be. Meanwhile, Emily thrived on attention. If I mentioned a fascinating lecture, she'd interrupt with a story about a party where she met a hospital administrator's son. My parents would jump on her story, relieved to escape my boring academic pursuits. I learned to keep my dreams close, building a private world where my ambition could breathe. The night before I left for college, sitting alone in our backyard, I made myself a promise. Someday, I would be undeniable. Someday, I would force them to see me. I just didn't know how many years, how much pain that would take. Princeton's pre-med program should have been huge. Their reaction, a mixture of surprise and concern. Princeton? That's going to be expensive, Samantha. Are you sure this is the path you want? No shame in starting at community college if you're not completely certain. Even with a partial scholarship, they agreed to pay for the rest, but every tuition payment came with reminders of their sacrifice and dire warnings. My dad even sent me articles about med school dropout rates. I threw myself into my studies. While other freshmen partied, I was securing research positions. Each perfect exam, each glowing evaluation from a professor, was another brick in my future. Then, in my sophomore year, Emily announced she was interested in medicine. My parents were ecstatic. Like father, like daughter, my dad beamed. completely ignoring that he was a business exec and that I had blazed this trail first. They threw Emily a party when she got into Rutgers with a modest scholarship. "Looks like your little sister is following in your footsteps," my uncle told me. My mom overheard and laughed. "Oh, Samantha's still figuring things out. Emily's always known exactly what she wanted." I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. Visits home became a minefield. My achievements were met with polite nods and quick changes of subject. When I got into a competitive summer research program, my mom countered by showing me Emily's Instagram posts volunteering at a local clinic. "She's already getting hands-on experience," she'd say proudly. "She's always been so good with people." The message was clear. Emily had natural talent. I was just stubbornly forcing myself. Thankfully, college gave me genuine support. I found friends who shared my passion, professors who recognized my potential. Most importantly, I met Dr. Catherine Reynolds, a brilliant neurosurgeon who became my mentor. She saw something in me. "You have the mind of a surgeon," she said. "Methodical, precise, innovative. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." She actively helped me, invited me to observe surgeries, and wrote a medical school recommendation that made me tear up. "You're not just going to be a doctor, Samantha. You're going to be exceptional." Graduating summa cum laude with honors felt hollow at home. My parents seemed uncomfortable during the department reception when my professors showered me with praise. "You must be so proud," my advisor told them. "Samantha is one of the most promising students I've seen in 20 years. My father just gave a tight smile. "Yes, she's always been persistent." Later, at dinner, my achievements were quickly glossed over in favor of Emily's news. She was president of her pre-med society. "A natural leader," my dad toasted. I excused myself, needing to escape before I said something I regretted. Lying in my childhood bed, I finally understood the distance between us wasn't just emotional anymore. It was a fundamental disconnect. The next day, as I packed for medical school in New York, my mom whispered, "It's not too late to change your mind if it gets too difficult, sweetheart." I looked her straight in the eyes. "It already is too difficult, Mom, but I'm doing it anyway." It was the closest I'd ever come to confrontation. I saw the surprise on her face, but old habits die hard. By evening, she called to tell me about a family friend's daughter who dropped out of med school and was much happier teaching high school. I let her words wash over me. I decided then I would stop seeking their approval and just focus on proving myself. Right. Medical school at Columbia was grueling, but profoundly fulfilling. I thrived, fueled by genuine passion. I was drawn to cardiothoracic surgery, mesmerized by its complexity. My residency at New York Presbyterian meant 80-hour work weeks, catching sleep in 15-minute increments. It was exhaustion, yes, but also an exhilaration I couldn't explain. Not that I tried to explain it to my family. Our calls became brief, superficial exchanges. "How's the hospital?" my mom would ask, as if I were engaged in some exotic, concerning activity. "Busy but good," I'd reply, no longer bothering with details. "You're working too hard," she'd say. "You need a life outside medicine. Have you met anyone special?" The message was clear. My career was something to fit around the real priorities of marriage and family. Meanwhile, Emily had dropped out of medical school in her second year. My parents spun it as her wisely pursuing a balanced lifestyle. I found out from a mutual acquaintance that she'd actually failed several key courses. They never mentioned her struggles. Instead, they framed her decision as self-aware. "Not everyone is cut out for that kind of stress," my dad told relatives at Thanksgiving. "Emily's smart enough to know what's right for her." When my aunt asked about my residency, my mother cut in, Samantha still plugging away, with a sigh that conveyed both martyrdom and doubt. "We worry about her, of course. She's always been so intense." I heard my father add, "The medical field has such a high burnout rate. We're just hoping she doesn't push herself too far." What hurt most wasn't their lack of faith, I was used to that, but the active undermining of my reputation. Cousins and friends told me my parents regularly described me as struggling and overwhelmed. When I received a prestigious residency award, they never mentioned it. When I was selected for a specialized surgical fellowship, they told relatives I was still in school. My Aunt Margaret, the family truth teller, pulled me aside at Christmas. "They're telling everyone you're barely hanging on," she said bluntly. Richard told the Petersons you were considering a less demanding specialty because you couldn't handle the pressure. Is that true? Absolutely not. I snapped, a knot of anger and hurt tightening. I'm excelling. My attending physicians recommended me for advanced training in minimally invasive techniques. Margaret studied my face. I thought so. Your parents have always had a strange blind spot when it comes to you, Samantha. But I want you to know, not everyone in this family shares their perspective. It was a small comfort, but it couldn't erase the knowledge that my own parents were actively sabotaging me. After that, I made a difficult decision. I stopped sharing any career news with them. The pain of having my accomplishments dismissed was bad enough. Knowing they were being twisted into failures was unbearable. I poured everything into my work instead. In my 3rd year of residency, I contributed to a groundbreaking procedure, co-authoring a paper in a prestigious medical journal. My hospital held a reception. Dr. Reynolds sent flowers, the first of many. You're on your way. My parents weren't there. I hadn't invited them. When I mentioned the publication on our monthly call, my mom replied, "That's nice, dear. Did I tell you Emily started her own wellness blog? She already has 500 followers. I started distancing myself from family gatherings. Work schedule. Hospital commitments. The truth was, I couldn't bear the hours of subtle digs and comparisons. Each interaction left me drained, doubting myself, emotions I couldn't afford in my career. You're never around anymore, my mother complained. Family should come first, Samantha. I wanted to ask, when had I ever come first in this family? But I swallowed the words. I'm building my career, Mom. It requires sacrifice. Well, Emily manages to visit every Sunday, she countered. Emily's business was a part-time job at a wellness center, subsidized by my parents. I bit my tongue again. The irony was, while my family expected me to fail, my professional reputation was soaring. By my early 30s, I was a rising star in cardiothoracic surgery on the East Coast. My specialization in minimally invasive techniques had earned me national recognition. What no one in my family knew was that Massachusetts General Hospital had approached me with an unprecedented opportunity. They wanted me to be chief of surgery. At 34, I'd be one of the youngest chiefs in their history, and one of the few women. The recruitment was intense, confidential. I told no one in my family. Years of diminishment had taught me to protect my professional life. When the offer came, I was alone in my apartment, overlooking Central Park. We believe you're the future of surgical medicine, Dr. Mitchell, the hospital director told me. We want you to lead our team. After accepting, I sat on my balcony with champagne, watching the sunset. I'd achieved something undeniable. Part of me wanted to call my parents, to finally force them to see. But a deeper wisdom held me back. This moment was mine to savor. I decided to tell them in person, once the achievement was an established fact. Before I could, my family orchestrated one final, infuriating episode of dismissal. My parents organized a dinner to celebrate Emily's engagement to a wealthy real estate developer. I flew in, genuinely happy for her, despite everything. The dinner was at an upscale restaurant, everyone toasting. I arrived slightly late. My father was mid-speech. We always knew Emily would find someone special. She's always had a gift for connecting with people, for knowing what she wants and going after it. To Emily and James, you make us prouder than words can express. I slipped into my seat. My mother finally noticed me. Oh, Samantha, you made it. We were just about to order. No mention of my delayed flight, just an afterthought. Throughout dinner, Emily dominated with wedding plans. My parents beamed, adding, she's always had such clear vision. When a cousin asked what I'd been up to, my mother answered before I could. Samantha's still at the hospital in New York. Still working those crazy hours. She shook her head. We keep telling her there's more to life than work, don't we, Richard? Some people take longer to find their path. My father agreed with a pointed glance at Emily's ring. But better late than never. Something snapped inside me. Here I was, offered one of the most prestigious positions in my field, a role surgeons twice my age would envy. And I was being patronized as someone who hadn't found her path. Actually, I started, the announcement of my new position on the tip of my tongue. But Emily chose that moment to stand and tap her glass. James and I have one more piece of news, she announced. We're expecting. I'm going to be a mom. The table erupted in cheers. My mother burst into tears of joy. My father wrapped his arm around Emily, radiating pride. In the commotion, no one noticed I hadn't finished my sentence. No one cared what news I might have had. In that moment, I made my decision. They would learn about my achievement when they couldn't ignore or diminish it. The next morning, as I packed to return to New York, my mother cornered me. "You should learn from your sister, Samantha," she said, folding a towel that didn't need folding. "Emily understands what really matters in life. It's not too late for you to focus on building a family instead of just a career." I looked at her, this woman who had never truly seen me, and felt a strange peace. "I'm very happy with my life, Mom," I said simply. "Are you? You work all the time. You barely visit. You don't have a partner or children. That's not much of a life." I picked up my suitcase. "It's my life, and it's a good one." She shook her head, the familiar disappointment settling on her features. "We just want what's best for you." "No," I replied quietly. "You want what you think is best for me. There's a difference." I left for the airport shortly after, returning to New York to prepare for my move to Boston. 2 weeks later, I started as chief of surgery at Massachusetts General. The hospital held a reception. My office had a view of the Charles River and a door with my name and title in elegant lettering. I sent no pictures home. I made no announcements. This achievement was still mine alone, protected from their diminishment. I would tell them eventually, I thought, when the moment was right. As it turned out, the moment would choose itself. I was in a department budget meeting when my assistant knocked urgently. "Dr. Mitchell, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's an emergency call for you. It's about your sister." My heart dropped. Emily had collapsed. She was being rushed to Massachusetts General. The irony wasn't lost on me. Of all the hospitals in Boston, she was coming to mine. I hurried to the emergency department. Emily had severe preeclampsia. Serious, but manageable. I made my way to her room, still in my professional attire, but without my white coat. Through the partially open door, I heard my mother complaining, "I don't understand why they're making us wait so long. The doctor should have been here by now." I took a deep breath and entered. Emily looked pale but stable. My father stood by the window. My mother clutched Emily's hand. They looked up, but their expressions showed only mild acknowledgement. No relief, no gratitude. "Have you spoken to the doctors? Do you know what's happening?" my mother asked, less than 20 minutes after her panicked call. "I just got here, Mom," I replied, moving to Emily's other side. "How are you feeling?" Emily sighed dramatically. "Terrible. They said my blood pressure is dangerously high. They're worried about the baby." I nodded. "Preeclampsia can be serious, but you're in the right place. Mass General has an excellent maternal-fetal medicine team." My father frowned. "And how would you know that? You work in New York." The perfect opening, but something held me back. That familiar dismissive tone, the automatic assumption that I couldn't possibly know what I was talking about. Old patterns, even in crisis. "I keep up with hospital rankings," I said simply, deciding this wasn't the moment. Emily's health was the priority. My mother made a small noise of disapproval. "Well, I hope they send someone experienced to look after Emily. She needs the best care possible." "I'm sure they'll send someone very qualified," I replied, biting back the urge to tell her that as chief of surgery, I could personally ensure it. The next hour passed in uncomfortable silence. Emily complained, my mother fussed. When I offered to get more information, my father waved me off. The nurse said the doctor would be here soon. "We don't need you running around asking questions and getting in the way." I sat in a corner chair, observing. Even here, in my hospital, where I held the highest surgical position, I was still the outsider. The irony was almost laughable. My mother made pointed comments about some people being too busy for family, even as I sat right there, having dropped everything. My father checked his watch, muttering about inefficiency. Emily alternated between worries about the baby and complaints about the uncomfortable bed. Not once did anyone ask about my life, my work, or express genuine pleasure that I was there. I was simply expected to be present, but invisible. Supportive, but silent. As the afternoon wore on, my father stepped out. My mother leaned closer to Emily. At least this might help Samantha understand what she's missing, she whispered. All that focus on career, and look at what really matters in the end. Family. I remained silent, watching Emily nod. Both of them, completely forgetting that my career was dedicated to saving lives. The tension was thick when a nurse finally entered. She was checking Emily's vitals when she glanced up and saw me. Her eyes widened. I gave a small shake of my head, hoping for discretion. She turned back to Emily. The attending physician will be here shortly. We're monitoring your blood pressure closely, and the baby's heartbeat remains strong. It's about time, my mother huffed. We've been waiting for hours. It's been approximately 70 minutes since admission, the nurse corrected politely. Dr. Bennett is one of our top maternal fetal specialists. My mother sniffed, unimpressed. My silent vigil continued, a strange calm settling over me as I waited for the inevitable collision of worlds. The door swung open, and Nurse Jackson returned, this time with a young resident. They were checking Emily's chart when Nurse Jackson glanced up and saw me again. What happened next unfolded in slow motion. The nurse straightened, her casual demeanor replaced by professional respect. She stepped away from Emily's bed and walked directly toward me, stopping a respectful distance. Then, to the astonishment of everyone in the room, she gave a slight, deferential bow. "Hello, Chief of Surgery," she said clearly. "I didn't realize you were already here with the patient. Dr. Bennett is on her way to consult." The silence was deafening. I could almost hear the gears turning in my family's minds. Emily's mouth fell open, her usual dramatic flair failing her in genuine shock. My father, who just returned, froze in the doorway, phone still in hand. My mother looked from the nurse to me and back again, her expression morphing from confusion to disbelief. "There must be some mistake," she finally said with a nervous laugh. "My daughter works at a hospital in New York. She's not. She can't be." Nurse Jackson looked confused. "Dr. Samantha Mitchell has been our chief of surgery for the past 3 months, she stated matter-of-factly. One of the youngest chiefs in the hospital's history. All eyes turned to me. I stood up slowly, smoothing my silk blouse. "Thank you, Nurse Jackson," I said calmly. "Yes, I am familiar with the case. Dr. Bennett is exactly who my sister needs to see right now." The nurse nodded professionally. The resident, Dr. Patel, looked equally confused but maintained composure. "We'll continue monitoring Mrs. Collins's blood pressure," he said, using Emily's married name. "The latest readings show it's still elevated, but has stabilized somewhat." "Good," I replied. "Please keep me updated on any changes." As the medical staff returned to Emily, I watched my family's reactions. Emily's shock morphed into something complex: surprise, confusion, and what looked almost like betrayal, as if my success were an attack on her. My father moved to my mother's side, his expression hardening defensively. My mother just stared at me as if I were a stranger. "Chief of Surgery," she whispered. "But you never said anything. Would it have mattered if I had?" I asked quietly. Before she could answer, the door opened again. Dr. Bennett entered. She was one of our most respected specialists, a commanding presence. She spotted me immediately. "Dr. Mitchell," she said with genuine warmth. "I didn't expect to see you here today." "Family emergency," I explained. "This is my sister, Emily Collins." Dr. Bennett's eyebrows rose. "I see. Well, she's in good hands here." She turned to Emily with a reassuring smile. "Mrs. Collins, I've reviewed your case. The preeclampsia is concerning, but manageable. We'll need to keep you hospitalized for monitoring." "Dr. Mitchell," Dr. Bennett continued, addressing me professionally. "Based on the initial assessment, we're considering starting magnesium sulfate as a precaution against seizures. Given your sister's current condition, would you concur?" The room seemed to hold its breath as Dr. Bennett deferred to my medical opinion, an unmistakable acknowledgement of my authority and expertise. "Yes," I replied, after a moment's consideration. "That seems appropriate, given the severity of her symptoms. I'd also suggest continuous fetal monitoring for the next 24 hours at minimum." Dr. Bennett nodded. "Exactly what I was thinking. I'll order that right away." My father finally found his voice. "Now wait just a minute," he interjected. "Are you saying my daughter is making medical decisions about her sister?" Isn't that some kind of conflict of interest? Dr. Bennett looked surprised. Mr. Mitchell, your daughter is one of the most respected surgeons in the country. While obstetrics isn't her specialty, her medical opinion is highly valued. However, I am the attending physician and will be making all final treatment decisions. She turned back to me. Will you be staying for the treatment discussion? Yes, I said, meeting my father's gaze steadily. I'd like to hear the full plan. As Dr. Bennett began explaining Emily's treatment, other hospital staff filtered in and out, each one acknowledging me with the same respect. Dr. Mitchell, or Chief, creating an undeniable picture of my professional standing. My mother, who had been uncharacteristically silent, suddenly reached for my hand. Why didn't you tell us? She asked, her voice small. I gently withdrew my hand. When have you ever truly wanted to hear about my success, Mom? Her face flushed. That's not fair. We've always supported you. From the bed, Emily scoffed. All eyes turned to her. Oh, come on, she said, some of her usual dramatic flair returning. We all know Samantha was never the favorite. You guys made that pretty clear. My father stepped forward, his businessman instincts kicking in. Now's not the time for family drama, Emily. You need to focus on getting better. He turned to me with a stiff smile. Samantha, we've always been proud of you. You know that. We just worried about you working too hard. The practiced ease of his revisionist history was almost impressive. In any other circumstance, I might have let it pass. But standing in my hospital, surrounded by colleagues who respected me for exactly the qualities my family had always dismissed, I found I no longer needed to compromise. No, I said simply, you weren't proud of me. You were waiting for me to fail. Dr. Bennett, sensing the tension, tactfully excused herself. I'll check back in an hour. The nurse will start the magnesium sulfate immediately. As the door closed, my father's facade cracked. That's ridiculous. We always supported your interests. My interests? I repeated. You mean my career? The one you told everyone was falling apart? The one Mom suggested I should abandon just yesterday to focus on building a family? My mother had the grace to look embarrassed. We didn't know you were so successful. That's exactly the point, I replied. You never asked. You never wanted to know. You decided years ago who I was and what I was capable of, and you never bothered to update that assessment, even when the evidence was right in front of you. Emily, never one to stay out of the spotlight for long, interjected. Well, you could have told us you were some big-shot doctor. It's not like we wouldn't have been happy for you. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and felt a surprising wave of compassion. Emily had been shaped by our parents' expectations just as much as I had, just in the opposite direction. She had been told she was exceptional for so long that she'd never had to prove it. What might she have accomplished if she'd been held to higher standards? I'm not some big-shot doctor, I said quietly. I'm chief of surgery at one of the country's top hospitals. I've published over 30 papers in major medical journals. I've developed surgical techniques that are being taught across the country. And none of you know any of that because none of you ever really wanted to know who I actually am. The silence that followed was profound. My father stared out the window, his jaw working. My mother twisted her wedding ring, tears welling in her eyes. Emily looked down at her hospital blanket, unusually subdued. The moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. Dr. Patel returned with a nurse to begin Emily's treatment. As they set up, I stepped back, watching my family process what had just happened. In that moment, standing in my hospital, watching my colleagues care for my sister, I realized I had finally achieved what I had promised myself under the stars all those years ago. I had become undeniable. Emily remained in the hospital for 5 days. Her condition stabilized, the baby was healthy, and she was discharged with careful monitoring instructions. Throughout her stay, I visited daily, balancing my duties as chief of surgery with my role as her sister. The revelation of my position created a seismic shift in our family dynamic. Emily, surprisingly, was the first to adapt. On the 3rd day, as I checked in during my lunch break, she looked up from her magazine with unusual seriousness. You must be really good, she said simply. Everyone here practically genuflects when you walk in. I smiled slightly. I work hard. Yeah, she replied, studying me. You always did. She hesitated, then added, "I was jealous of you, you know." This caught me off guard. Jealous of me? Mom and Dad treated you like you hung the moon. Emily laughed, without humor. They did, and it was nice, I guess. But I always knew I wasn't earning it. You built something real, something they couldn't give you or take away. She rubbed her pregnant belly. I never had that. It was perhaps the most honest conversation we'd ever had. As Emily's discharge approached, we began tentatively rebuilding our relationship, not as competitors in our parents' attention economy, but as adults with our own strengths and weaknesses. My parents' adjustment was more complicated. My father attempted to rewrite history, claiming he had always believed in me, just pushing me to excel with his doubt. My mother vacillated between pride in my accomplishments and hurt that I had kept them secret. "We're your family," she said during a private moment in my office. "Families shouldn't have secrets. Families shouldn't make their children feel like they're constantly falling short either," I replied gently. "Every time I achieved something, you found a way to diminish it. Eventually, I stopped sharing because it hurt too much." "We never meant to hurt you," she insisted, tears welling. "We were just worried. Medicine is such a demanding field, and you are always so intense. That intensity is what makes me good at my job, Mom. It's not a flaw to be corrected. It's a strength to be channeled." She nodded slowly, though I wasn't sure she truly understood. Old perceptions die hard, and my parents had spent decades viewing me through a particular lens. It would take time and consistent evidence to reshape their image of me. As weeks passed, I established clear boundaries. I declined their initial flood of invitations, explaining that my schedule as chief of surgery was demanding. When I did accept an invitation for Sunday dinner a month after Emily's hospitalization, I left when my father began introducing me to neighbors as our daughter, the doctor, with the same tone he might have used for our daughter, the circus performer. Technically accurate, but tinged with subtle disbelief. "I've worked hard to earn my position and the respect that comes with it," I explained as I collected my coat. "When you're ready to respect it too, we can try this again." My Aunt Margaret called the next day. "Good for you," she said without preamble. "Richard's been getting away with that condescending attitude for years. It's about time someone called him on it." Gradually, tentatively, a new family dynamic began to emerge. My parents learned that my success wasn't a phase or a fluke, but a sustainable reality. Emily, to everyone's surprise, developed a genuine interest in patient advocacy after her experience and began volunteering at a support group for high-risk pregnant women. 6 months after the incident, as my family now referred to it, I invited them to the hospital's annual fundraising gala. I was being honored for pioneering a new minimally invasive cardiac procedure, and I decided it was time for them to see me in my professional element. The evening was transformative. My parents watched as hospital board members, renowned physicians, and grateful patients approached me with genuine respect and admiration. They listened as the hospital director described my contributions to the field. They witnessed, perhaps for the first time, who I had become when they weren't looking. "I had no idea," my father said quietly as we stood at the reception afterward. "The way people talk about you, you're really changing lives." "That's why I do it, Dad," I replied. "It was never about proving anything to anyone. It was about being who I was meant to be." He nodded, a complexity of emotions crossing his face. "I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner. It wasn't a complete transformation. Decades of patterns don't disappear overnight. But it was a start. Over the following year, we began building a relationship based on who we actually were, not who they had decided I should be. I established a mentoring program for young surgeons, particularly women and minorities, who often struggled against others' limited perceptions. I shared my story openly, emphasizing that external validation, even from those closest to us, can never replace self-belief. "Your worth isn't determined by others' ability to see it," I told a promising resident. "Build your excellence, brick by brick, day by day. Eventually, it becomes undeniable, even to those most committed to denying it." The greatest freedom I discovered came not from finally receiving my family's approval, but from no longer needing it. My confidence was built on genuine achievement and impact, not on others' perceptions. The little girl who had once desperately sought validation had grown into a woman who created her own. Emily delivered a healthy baby boy 3 months after her hospitalization. At the family gathering to welcome him, she pulled me aside. "I want him to know his Aunt Samantha," she said, the baby sleeping peacefully in her arms. "I want him to know what it means to find your path and stick to it, no matter what anyone says." I looked down at my nephew's tiny face. "I'd like that. And maybe someday," she added with a small smile, "you can explain to him what a cardiothoracic surgeon actually does, because I still have no idea." I laughed. A genuine laugh, free from the tension that had characterized our relationship for so long. "It's a date." My journey from dismissed daughter to respected chief of surgery taught me that true validation can only come from within. External recognition, while satisfying, especially in those moments when my family finally saw me clearly, is ultimately fleeting. What endures is the knowledge that I built something meaningful, something that extends beyond myself to touch countless lives. If you're watching this, and you feel unrecognized or underestimated by those who should believe in you most, know that your worth isn't diminished by their inability to see it. Build your excellence quietly, if necessary, but build it nonetheless. Your success doesn't need their permission or acknowledgement to be real. The greatest revenge against doubt isn't proving others wrong. It's proving yourself right. Have you ever been underestimated by family or friends? How did you respond? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it today. Remember, sometimes the people who are meant to support us the most are the last to recognize our potential. Don't let that stop you from becoming exactly who you're meant to be. Thank you for listening to my story. I wish you the strength to pursue your dreams, even when no one else believes in you.